Good evening, everybody. I'm Helen Arcantu. I'm the CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. Once again, the YWCA of Northern New Jersey is so proud to sponsor the Teaneck International Film Festival and the Puffin Foundation's Indie Lens pop-up that brings together important films like Storming Caesar's Palace to our community. Our mission at the YWCA of Northern New Jersey is to empower women, eliminate racism, and create equal opportunities. And it couldn't be more aligned with the Teaneck International Film Festival, which is known as the film festival with a social conscience. Our daily work at the YW focuses on empowering women and girls with the tools that they need to learn and grow along their path to success, advocating for the equality of all people, regardless of age, race, gender, ethnicity, religion, income level, sexual orientation, or disability, and supporting survivors and those impacted by sexual violence and raising awareness about Healing Space, Bergen County's only sexual violence resource center. Tonight's film couldn't be more relevant, especially since we are on the heels of Women's Equal Pay Day, which was yesterday, and symbolizes the day that a woman reaches pay parity with her male counterpart. As we know, there's still many disparities that are showcased in this film that's still happening today. For example, if we're talking about hourly pay, pay for a woman is 77 cents for every dollar for a man in this similar position from an earning perspective. When that's broken down by demographics, what is revealed is even more distressing than that. Asian American, Pacific, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander women earn 80 cents to the dollar, Black women 64 cents to the dollar, Latinas 54 cents to the dollar, Native American women 51 cents to the dollar, and the numbers are distressing. I am personally very grateful to women like Ruby Duncan. I stand on her shoulders, grateful for her community organizing, such an important grassroots movement that not only brought these equity disparities to the forefront of our conscience, but also it challenged the establishment on behalf of those women and families who were marginally underserved. Her fight for universal basic income for all was and is a human right. It is only through her tenacity and her dedication that she was able to achieve so much for so many and change the mindsets and notions of our child welfare system, of our welfare system. This evening, I'm so proud to be part of this film and to elevate stories like Ruby's. We know we really take from her the inspiration to create a fair and more inclusive world, and that's what we will talk about with our wonderful guests that we have here this evening. Before we start, I just want you all to know that we will be dedicating some time at some point this evening for some questions. So please feel free to submit them in the chat box, and we will do our best to address them all before the end of the evening. But we will start with a little talk back for you with this wonderful panel that we have together, and I'm going to introduce them to you now. Joining me is Hazel Gerlin Pooler, an accomplished Colombian-born, New York City-based director, producer, and documentary filmmaker. Storming Caesar's Palace is her first feature-length documentary. Welcome, Hazel. We also have with us Sandra Phillips Gilbert. She is a social service representative at the Department of Human Services, Economic Security Administration in Washington, D.C., a former elected advisory neighborhood commissioner, and the daughter of Ruby Duncan. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you.
And we have with us Ms. Rona Vega. She is the founder and CEO of Parent Matters, who for the past 35 years was not only empowered through her own 5 children to come together and support her family, but through her family ended up coming together and creating a support system for so many families in our community that has resources and tools and access to educational and personal success opportunities because of her great work. So welcome, Rona. So let's jump right into some questions here. Hazel, let's just start at the beginning. How did you learn about Ruby Duncan and what inspired you to create this wonderful film?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having us here. It's so exciting to be able to share the film with you. TIFF is Fabulous Film Festival. I'm just so excited. So thank you. I came to this film in a couple of ways. Actually, I first read a book called Storming Caesar's Palace. It was written by Annalise Orlek. She's a Dartmouth professor. And it was published back in 2005. And so I read it, ages ago. And when I read it, I thought, oh, this should be, a documentary. This is incredible. The people in it, the stories, the history, all of it. And I thought, well, this shouldn't be so hard to do. I had already had a background in documentary filmmaking, doing projects for PBS, working with Henry Louis Gates Jr. And so I kind of knew how to do historical projects, I thought. But it actually turned out to be really hard to find all of the archival, and it took a long time. This was 15 years in the making. And so I'm so glad to finally have it out in the world. The other way that I come to this project is in a more personal way. I am an adoptee, and the story goes that my mother was a 16-year-old girl who could not afford or couldn't keep me for one reason or another. And so I've always wanted to kind of uplift the work that mothers are doing to be able to support their children and to be able to fight for them in any way that they can, and ideally, we live in a world one day where mothers don't have to make the choice about whether or not they can keep their kids or provide for them, or, having a universal basic income or having an affordable housing. All of these things should be something that we all have. And so my passion for uplifting these stories really fueled my 15-year journey. So,
Well, we're so glad that it did, and what a amazing testament. And as I said at the start, it is really amazing how, although it really is from a really and clearly also very evident from the footage, it's from a very specific time in our history, right? But it is still so it really speaks to us, when we look, where we are today, how many of these issues are still so present in our lives. So to that end, let's talk about the welfare system. What did Ruby discover early on about the welfare system and why it didn't work for most families in need? And, Sandra, I'd love for you to jump in on this one as well, with Hazel.
Sure. I mean, I think from speaking with Ruby and hearing her tell her story about this, I think she basically realized that the welfare system was woefully inadequate, and that it just really was a government organization that was constantly sort of surveilling and looking for fraud for all of the women that were receiving public assistance. And so there became sort of a stigma attached to it. And she just also was like, we actually can't live on this amount of money. This is completely does not sufficiently support our families in the way that it's supposed to. I mean, welfare in Nevada at that time, they were one of the lowest. They were receiving sort of the lowest benefits in the country. And even with commodities, food, which is sort of government cheese and all of that, it was still not, first of all, didn't taste very good, obviously, but it was also, not that healthy, and also just wasn't enough. And so as we see in the film, the women are cut off illegally. And when they are able to get back on, they're still living at like $140 or something like that below the poverty line. And so welfare, the notion that, you can, be eating steaks and like driving a Cadillac and having a fur coat and all the crazy, like racist sort of tropes that come with, the welfare queen idea, is just completely insane, because you actually like can barely pay, for housing and for a light bill and to put food on your table. And I don't think things have changed really very much since then.
Yeah. And Hazel, you are very familiar with this system present day, as well, because of your work. So could you tell us a little bit about that, and what do we see with the present day system versus what Hazel just shared from a historical perspective?
Well, I'll say that welfare was anti-family. And my mother realized that she would not achieve what we call the American dream, having the house, the picket fence, the dog. And so her goal was to be able to work and make a living to afford what we needed. And she saw the inequities and the problems the women shared amongst themselves. And they just decided that they had to do something. So, like I said, welfare today, there's some changes. We are now getting as much training, dealing with customer service, learning policy and procedure, and not violating recipients or applicants' rights, when they apply. But it's that there still needs to be programming that will allow a family to make a living and have that safety net for Medicare and SNAP. But back in the 70s, we didn't have that luxury at all. And her goal and her dream was to see that we had that home and that picket fence and that dog. Now, we got the home eventually. We got the dog, but we didn't get the picket fence. So we're still today striving. Families are still striving to make ends meet. And the system back then was anti-family, and it still is. Because if you get a job, you make too much, you're going to have to be removed. And we need to make sure that families know that they can get a job, get the training they need, and have that safety net. And I don't know why the wealthiest country in the world, and we're still struggling. Matter of fact, what happened in the 70s is even far, far worse now in 2023. So we got a lot of work. We got a lot of work. And hopefully this film will get people up and active and involved, be proactive than to wait.
Yes, yes. And, I would imagine, Hazel, when you're making a film like this, and as you talked about, you wanted to uplift, these issues that are so core to the story. But we want people, right? I mean, when you're creating a film this, you want the folks watching to say, wow, all these years have passed and not much has changed. And if anything, as Sandra has said, certain disparities have become even more fractured, more widened, and even with technology and some of the, what one would say are positives, that have come, into our society, have almost put more of a spotlight on, this schism, that we have here that we're dealing with. So, from a mindset of creating a film like this and looking at this being such a social problem that needs advocacy, obviously Ruby being such a social justice advocate unto her own, for this work, I'm just, curious what your thought is for viewers, what action, what do you want them to do, watching this film?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, many things that I want folks to do after seeing this film, but I think the most important lesson for me is really that anyone can make a difference. So it can be a small change or a big change. If anyone feels any sort of kind of injustice that they're facing or one their community is facing, really feel like you can come together and you can, you learn together, you can figure out what the law is that's not right, that you want changed, and then start, whether it's protesting, doing, organizing, try to mobilize so you can lobby and then get involved politically. But I think that people can, do anything. And I think one of the things that is a barrier sometimes is that people think to themselves, I'm just one person. Like, how am I going to fight, the entire welfare system? Or how am I going to fight against, to get food stamps or like things like that we see in the film. But I think we also see in the film that it just takes that kind of consciousness raising of like, oh, this happened to you and this happened to me and this happened to like a bunch of us. And so really this is actually a systemic problem that if we come together, we really can try to change it. And I think the other thing that I think is important to realize is that, this could really happen to anyone. So like a lot of people, I think, will think to themselves, oh, I'm not going to need welfare. This isn't a problem that I'm going to have to face. But as we saw with COVID, and then suddenly everybody was basically home, unemployed, businesses shuttered, everything, a stimulus check, that was welfare, right? So
Yes.
Farm subsidies, that's welfare. Tax breaks to anybody is like essentially a form of welfare. And so the point is basically that at some point there is a good likelihood that everyone watching this, unfortunately, and that other people, in the US, it's something like, I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like, a lot of Americans basically are one sort of life change, whether it's an accident, a medical emergency, a divorce, a fire, some sort of crazy life change thing away from poverty, because suddenly you'll not be able to go to work, or you won't be able to have that home, or you will have those assets that you thought you had. And suddenly you're going to realize that you need, public assistance. And so you're going to want the safety net system to be working and ready for you. So I think that whoever you are, this is like a really relevant and important thing for us to all really focus on, because as people, as Sandra said, and as you said, Helen, too, this is like a human rights issue. And, in the most wealthy country in the world, having poor children and having hungry children is a policy choice. It doesn't have to be that way at all. That is something that our politicians have set up, and we have a responsibility to get out there and to tell them we're not having that anymore.
Absolutely. And, Rona obviously is, here locally in Bergen County. But, similarly, she saw inequity in our education system that was impacting her children. And, like Ruby, she organized and, put together a solution, for a problem. So Rona, would you share with us a little bit about your process and how you kind of identify with what Ruby did in the film and how it speaks to what you've done as well in terms of your present day?
Yeah, absolutely, Helen. Thank you. First of all, thank you all for having me, for putting this film together, for Sandra, for your mom, for taking the steps that she took. It's just amazing and so important. I mean, this story resonates with me on ways that most people here don't even know. I grew up in public housing in New York City. My mother worked 3 jobs to stay off welfare, right? Because that wasn't what she wanted, and made sure we all went to college, all those 5 of us. And here I am 30 years ago. I left a college graduate. I had a cushy job in LA and working for the Raiders and the Clippers and brokering deals with major concert promoters. And due to divorce and domestic violence, came back across country to the East Coast. And there you are. I needed that safety net. I needed that safety net in a huge way for my children, so they can eat, so that I could have childcare.
Exactly.
With my county saying this is not the place for someone who was single to have to be able to afford to feed their kids. I don't know if I lost connection there. Did you hear me?
Yeah. I think we pieced together what you were saying, so I think you can keep going, Rona.
Yeah, so fast forward here, I can't even believe when I was watching this movie. I can't believe it's been 30 years and the trials and tribulations that I went through. I had to live with my sister for quite a while, and until we could get a place on our own. And I was just in recovery from domestic violence and divorce, and just trying to pull myself back together. But there were so many needs that I had, and fast forward to now, or raising 5 kids. I remarried, fortunately, and the system for just helping young people navigate through careers, right? Getting into college and finding vocational or finding their passion has been a big part of who I am now. And just looking at my mom and how the legacy that she left us and how she was able to get us out of public housing in New York City and introduce us to so many opportunities, right, that would lead us to the life that we have now. And so that's what I do for parents all over the nation, wherever they are, but mostly right here in Bergen County, New Jersey, because I see the great need. And it's not enough to just be able to pay your rent or your taxes or your mortgage. A lot of young people just don't know how to navigate, and a lot of parents don't know how to help them navigate. So that's what we do at Parent Matters. So again, thank you for having me. This story touches me in a big way. So
Well,
great.
thank
Thanks
you,
for doing
Rona.
that work
Thank
on the
you.
ground. It's great.
You know, Sandra, I'm curious. I mean, obviously, we know what you do present day, and obviously, you lived through what we all watched, you know, as a documentary. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, I know you started to touch on earlier a little bit about some of the goals your mother had, you know, with you know, with this movement that she started, but can you talk a little bit about how it impacted you and how it, you know, professionally steered your career where you are today?
Yes, sorry about the cold, but yes, watching my mother and the women organize the meetings. I was there every step of the way, attending meetings, strategy meetings, passing out flyers, helping to get more members, more community members signed up to be a part of the National Welfare Rights Group. And from that, I have always been involved in social justice protests, community, church, work. And I decided 10 years ago to run as an elected ANC commissioner, that is a representative of the community that you live in. And you're like a liaison between the government and the community. And by doing that, I realized that I could get more for the community. We were able to get a new community center and library, which was about $16.9 million. And I had say in, you know, getting benefits, resources for the community. And it's hard to live with a Ruby Duncan and not be involved. So I enjoy what I do, and currently working for the Department of Human Services. I'm now on the other side. So I get to work with folks just like me, just like back in the 70s. And I get to advocate for them and make sure that whatever they come into our office for, that their rights are not violated, that they understand why they're, you know, what the rules, the policies, and the procedure, and to assist them in getting that. And I also take time to encourage and uplift them, especially mothers on TANF, not to quit their jobs. It's sad, like I said, you get a job, and then if you make too much, you cannot remain on public assistance, or you get 6 additional months of SNAP before you're let go. And then as they get these jobs and they're establishing themselves, they fall right back down because they don't have the social safety security net. And this is why I say these programs are good, but the policy is anti-family. And so it's going to take a lot of work for us to get our elected representatives in the government to understand we need policy which would allow people to have that safety net and to get whatever training they need that will help them to have that American dream, that house, the picket fence, and the dog. And so it's really hard. I don't see many opportunities where people are achieving that. And it's just really sad for me because I see more people that are homeless or on the verge of not having a home. So this movie will relate to you, whether you were in the 70s or current. And I like to, you know, be a part of that, be a part of helping to push that out, to get people more involved.
And as I'm listening
Helen.
to you,
Oh,
yeah, go please.
sorry, I just want to jump in and say thank you so much for doing the work you've done with your mom and then on the other side. You know, my daughter, who went to Spelman College, became an advocate back here in Teaneck, but also because of her mentors. But I remember she called me crying hysterically from the state building. She was one of the only people of color in the audience, and she said they were doing some reform on welfare. And she just, at 18, 19 years old, was just beside herself, because she said, Mom, they're making these laws and all the people that it affects, they're not here to even fight for this. And it really pushed her into the work that she has done for the last 10 years since college. But so thank you for the work that you're doing, because it means a lot. And even for someone like me coming, you know, from a job, from college educated, to being homeless, to literally being locked out of my apartment at some point, living in my car with my 2 daughters, and taking WIC, right? And the childcare subsidies and all those programs that helped me get back on my feet. I don't know what I would have done without all these support systems. But, and then working with domestic violence victims for almost 15 years and seeing that the rates not changing and being an advocate on that end. And so this work is just paramount. And so thank you for doing this, and whatever I can do to continue this. You know, one of the things I talk to a lot of parents I work with is about home ownership. You know, when I worked on my master's, I did a paper on, and I always had this vision that it was only Black and Latino people who were on welfare, to come to find out that, you know, as far as housing, affordable housing, it was mostly single white women that were on affordable or using affordable housing. So I implied on so many young people graduating from college to apply, if you see new construction, to get into these programs in DC. Actually, my daughter got into a program right there in DC. And it's because her income was still low, just graduating college, where she was able to buy for very low housing rate. So a lot of times it's just information, and that's why I created Parent Matters, to share so much information that we don't even know exists.
Yeah, and you know, Rona, you just kind of illustrated what I was about to say to Sandra earlier, really, is that representation matters. You just both really, I think, you know, just spotlighted that, you know, if we didn't have you working in the system, Sandra, and you who had the life experience, you bring that empathy and you bring that experience to your work. You're able to better deliver the services to those that you're working with, and also advocate to the administration accordingly. And if, you know, we don't create the opportunity for people that do not look like me, you know, to be in these positions, we're really doing a disservice, you know, in terms of delivering the service and changing the service to be where it needs to be. And, you know, Rona, what you just said also obviously really illustrates that as well. You know, what you bring because of your life experience to the work that you're doing now is transformative. So it's so key and so important.
I like to add about advocates today. I'm just so proud of the different groups that advocate for the clients, and we call them customers, because they're quick to take it to the court. If you're terminating individuals, you're not letting them know why they're being terminated, then these groups, they have taken cases to the court, and then we have to show that we're getting the training, that we're understanding the policy. So there's multiple groups that are working together to make sure that clients are not being discriminated. If they find it, they're quick to draw attention to that. And so I commend all the various advocates and organizations for being able to just, you know, deal with it quick and efficiently.
Absolutely. And just a reminder to those of you watching this evening, you can put any questions in the chat and we will integrate them into our conversation for sure.
I'd love to pick
Hazel,
up on
did you?
the point,
Yes.
you know, that you were sort of, it made me think about, you know, Ruby, one of the things that she would always say is we can do it and do it better. And I think that's a really big piece of this, because sort of touching on what we're all saying is that, you know, each person is the expert in their own experience. And so the person, you know, who is some politician who doesn't know how much, you know, milk costs or diapers cost or, you know, eggs cost or anything, they can't and shouldn't be the people who are making, you know, the bills and legislation for the people who actually, do know how to stretch a budget as far as it can go and balance their, checkbook each month and making everything stretch. So I think that really, if we empower the people who have the experience and encourage them to be able to start taking leadership roles in the community, whether it's through grassroots organizations, but then ultimately running potentially for office in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is one way that we can really have change in a way that's effective, so that, again, we can just be empowered and empower ourselves.
Yeah. And that is so key to, I know I spend a lot of time in my role at the YW trying to encourage women and women of color more specifically to run for office. Take any opportunity where you can sit, whether it's a, local council or, for assembly, Senate, wherever it is, because that is really how, again, the lived experience that just, even that, you have and you're sharing, having that someone with that background creating policy is, again, is transformative and will really get us to the point that when we watch a documentary like this from years ago, that we think to ourselves, wow, we were like that at one point. We're not able to watch this documentary and think about this as being the past. It still rings so true to us because the government still is filled with mostly white males, making our policy. And that really does impact, it really, really does impact, what we're talking about, because these issues, statistically, if we're looking at them, white males are not the ones that are being impacted here and living this experience.
Yeah. And I think, it's low income people as well. I think when we look at the statistics about who's on welfare, 3/4 of the people on welfare are white. So it's not as though this is only an issue facing women of color. I think that, poor women also, we've had so many screenings and so many people have come up to us and sort of said, I hadn't told anyone this before, but I get food stamps, or I, relied on WIC for something and things like that. And so it really touches everyone. And so I think, while obviously trying to uplift the stories of women of color and Black women in particular, and really showing the visionary work that Ruby and all of these mothers did, I also just think it's important that we not only think that it's women of color who have to deal with these issues, because that enables
Correct.
the powers that be to say, oh, well, we don't have to worry about that because it's only women of color who, whatever. I think that the more that we come together and unify, I think there's something like 45 million people who are low income in this country. I mean, if 45 million people showed up at the White House and said, we need change, I think they would have to do something. I think it's because they're able to separate us by, gender or race or religion or, geography, that they're able to kind of stop us. And also us needing to work all the time and have 3 jobs means we can't so easily just take off and protest in the street. It takes real organization and timing. And I think that that's all sort of purposeful, so that it is harder for us to unify. But I still feel like mother power and, people power. I think that really we can make a difference and we can get out there and make change. So
Absolutely.
I hope the film is inspiring that way.
I think it very much is, at least for me. We have an audience question who's asking a little bit of, I guess that falls a little bit into the stereotype about a welfare family. I would say they're asking that if it's true that in some families men leave so that their families can go on welfare and get that income. And I would say that there's all kinds of stereotypes that are out there, but the reality of it is there's families that need this assistance, and as a country we shouldn't be making barriers for anyone to access it. We should be supporting individuals to be able to get access to it, and to, support them as they can, to get off it as well. And I think, as Sandra said, and Hazel said also earlier when we were talking about the welfare system, is that it's not just about giving people funds up to one point and then pulling them away, and then they end up back on the system. We really need as a country to learn from what, history has shown us, that, folks need to be able to build up and then stay on, have that support for a period of time so that they can stabilize. We've not really understood, I think, the timeframes, how to deliver these programs appropriately to really support families, for sure. So I appreciate the question, though. We also have another question for Hazel, congratulating you as part of the question on this wonderful first full-length documentary. And the question is, what are you thinking about for your next project?
That's a good question. Well, thank you for congratulating me on the film. It's been a really long journey and definitely a labor of love. So it is very exciting to have it out there. I'm actually still really working on this film. It's been a learning experience for me, that making an independent film, a part of it is making the film, but then a part of it is continuing to fundraise for impact and for audience engagement. And for me, that's actually a really big part of this. I, obviously I'm thrilled to be at film festivals, and it's so much fun, and there's sort of that glitz and glamour and the red carpet and all that, and that's great. But really, I want this film to meet folks on the ground wherever they are. And so we have been doing a lot of work, finding and working with, grassroots organizations across the country, and trying to bring the film, whether it's virtually or in person, to folks, and then sort of trying to bring grassroots organizers together with other national organizations as well. We actually went to the state legislature in Nevada and Carson City, and we took Miss Ruby Duncan up there earlier this week. And so it's Children's Week over there. And so they're talking about, what can we do? And I'm hoping that we'll be able to try to push for making the child tax credit more of a permanent thing. During COVID, they were like, "Ooh, we cut child poverty in half," and it's like, I don't know why we stopped there. I don't know why don't we just keep going with that? And there are a lot of things like that. I think, not to get on my soapbox, but I just feel like there are a lot of things that we can be doing. And I think, talking about like a guaranteed income, having kind of a floor would also be really helpful, because I think, to Sandra's point, what happens is people get cut off at a certain point, and then everything, suddenly they have to pay everything, like full amount of rent at market value, full amount for all the groceries, and it's just too much. So their charts and things, you can see everyone just falls off at a certain point, and we need to be able to just make that higher, because as interest rates and cost of living and everything is going up, the amount that the government is giving to people is not. It's totally stagnant. It's like the same as it was. And in the film, the women are fighting for a guaranteed income, and I think it's like $6,500. And if we did that math today, it would be asking for something like $40,000. So the amount that they were asking for then was really revolutionary in itself, where they were just like, now when people talk about a guaranteed income, I don't even think it's that much. They're settling for much less. So I think we should actually be pushing harder. But so to answer your question, I'm still working on this. I really just want it to keep going.
Well, I want to jump in there. I would love to collaborate with you. My wheels are spinning, as you know, Helen, thinking about our youth and thinking about exposing them to filmmaking and all these opportunities and careers and vocations. One of the things we do in our signature program is an opportunity expo, where we bring all youth. We try to do them at the schools or local churches or recreation departments. And we try to make sure that young people, as early as middle school, have access to opportunities and careers and vocations, and start connecting them to pipelines and mentors. But we're also looking at Bergen Community College, we're talking now about doing an opportunity expo for the entire community, for parents as well, because, you talk about all these different problems that parents are facing. If they had some more technical skills, some more opportunities for entrepreneurship, training, and support. So if we offer that for the whole family at our opportunity expos, we could do wonders for the entire family. It's really hard also for a family, for a parent, to focus so much on their kids' education and their growth when they haven't really fully, been able to develop themselves. So we have to support the entire family. So I'd love to collaborate with you on anything and everything on what we're doing and you're doing. So thank you again for what you're doing here.
Yeah, that
Well,
would be amazing. I'd love to do that for sure. I mean, I think it's so important for us to reach youth in particular. I mean, this film is very intergenerational. It's sort of celebrating, the OGs, right? And really giving flowers to Ruby and to all these other mothers. But it's also seeing how, Sandra and you as well, Rhoda, like as being a child and seeing the work that your mothers were doing then made you so involved. And so the hope is that the next generation also remains involved because they're the activists of tomorrow. And really it's trying to reach people and Miss Ruby's always saying, vote. We want everyone from 17 and a half who can get out there and vote, be involved. And so I think it'd be great to collaborate. So we should definitely talk offline after this.
Yeah. And it really, and I think, that really, everything, Hazel, that you said that you're still doing for the film, just so much links to the Teaneck International Film Festival. And, its tagline of being the film festival with the social conscious, how it was named. That's exactly it. I mean, that's what these films are really about. It's not just about watching the film and turning it off, being like, well, that was good. It's about what does it stir inside of you? Does it agitate you enough to take some action in some way? And I think that's what TIFF really does for all of us, which is what's so special about it, is it does everything I've ever seen here does agitate me enough to want to get more involved, learn more, do more. And the fact that, you've created, and, I encourage everybody watching, start following the film on social media, start, staying connected to it through its website. And of course, to Parent Matters as well, and the great work there. I mean, there's so much happening with the film and what, you'll see all the places, all the red carpets and all the stuff, going on. But at the same time, you'll also see where you can get involved and, where the activism is still alive today. And, that you can really embrace. And locally, here in Bergen County, New Jersey, individuals like Rona and the work that she's doing, there is such a direct line drawn between the work that Ruby did and, the work that Rona is doing today. And clearly, you see, where Sandra's evolved to from her mother, and knowing, where Rona evolved to because of her mother and where her children are, the generational aspect is so key here for sure. And at the YW, we're very committed to engaging youth in terms of learning how to use their voice, because we do know that, we want to continue to see positive change, and getting everyone involved will do that. We do have one of our audience members asking how they can learn more about the event at Bergen Community College and the work that you're doing there. Rona, I know, again, folks can follow on social media for sure and check out website. And I know there's also e-blasts and apps and lots of ways to stay connected. So tell us so that our folks watching can stay connected to you, Rona, and the work you're doing.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that. Yes, so our website is exposureandopportunities.com. That's our parent company over Parent Matters. So reach out to me at any time. We'd love to have you. We use a lot of volunteers at our Opportunity Expos. We just had 30 volunteers at our local middle school in Teaneck, New Jersey, an Opportunity Expo that exposed, over 550 kids to 40 different opportunities and enrichment programs and vocations and mentors. And so it was powerful. So we'd love the support and collaboration. And we're so grateful to the YW for what they do. We do a lot of collaboration work with them. We ran a program called Junior Jumpstart. And Helen, you can go into that if you'd like to, a little bit more, helping high school juniors. We're actually starting next weekend again, in our third year, helping high school juniors navigate the college process. So before they start their senior year of college. So really trying to work together with the community to help young people navigate and help the entire family.
Yes.
Yes. And that's how we do, for a family like those that are connected to Junior Jumpstart, they may not have had parents that had gone to college and understand how to navigate that system to be able to access it for their child. And so having that support of the Junior Jumpstart team that helps with everything from the applications and writing the essay and navigating the financial aid forms and all of those pieces for the children involved really helps them start, for the family that they are, not even knowing what's coming in their future, but they're changing that, for their future generations, that they have access to opportunity thanks to programs like Junior Jumpstart, which is why it's very easy for the YWCA of Northern New Jersey to partner. We do believe that supporting and resources should not be so time limited. We believe that wraparound supports are needed, and we do have a responsibility to each other. Again, so much of this is really just about human rights, 100%, for sure, and accessibility for all is so key. So if there are any last questions, we would love to be able to take them from anyone watching. We're so grateful for everyone who joined today, and anyone who supported, continue to keep supporting the Teaneck International Film Festival. There's so many great opportunities to see more inspirational films, more educational films, to again agitate you in the best way possible, thanks to the team at the Teaneck International Film Festival. For the panel, I know we're waiting to see if we have any more questions. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share as we close out here?
Yes, I like to say this movie is a movement within a movement.
Mm.
Everyone that has seen the movie, the documentary, I have had numerous people come up to me. I mean, people in tears. People can identify with this documentary, and it energizes people. We're so comfortable now with the iPhones and all this easy stuff, and the people that worked hard so that the younger generations can have everything, they are now seeing what it took to get to a certain point. So this film, I just say it's a movement within itself. And if it helps to motivate people, that's what we need. And to bring all the groups together, to deal with issues across the board. So that's my take on it. I'm just inspired when I see it. I've seen it several times, and I never get bored. It touches me deep. And so to see other people feel the same way, that's inspiring for me.
Yeah, I really hope that we can get the film out to really as many different partner organizations that are doing this kind of work on the ground. I mean, as Sandra said, like it covers so many different aspects, from, having reproductive freedom and choice, to having affordable housing, to having food, to being able to have like good schools. There's so many pieces of it that we see throughout the story that I feel like it's not one thing or another. There's just so many issues that really dovetail, and they're all kind of interconnected. And so we are working to have an educational piece as well. So we are working on our sort of educational guide and questions and things like that, so that if anybody wants to have a screening of their own, they can go to our website, and they can you can get the film, you can take it to your school, you can have it at libraries, you can have it at your church, you can have it in a community. Women Make Movies is our distributor. And so there's ways that folks can get their hands on the film after the broadcast, and be great, because you can kind of have your own watch party and really take out of it what you want, and be able to have your own conversation about what issue it is that you feel most connected to, that is connected to the film. So just watch, and also watch the feature-length film, because there's stuff in there too, to that other person's question, I guess, about the man in the house rule, or like whether men leave, or that kind of thing. There was a rule, and it's in the film, and the women end up fighting against it, and now it was turned, abolished by the Supreme Court. But there were even more rules about women not being able to receive, funding from the government if there was a man around, stuff like that. So there's lots of things in the film which were not in the short version also. So to watch it March 20th on
I was just gonna say.
on Independent Lens. So
Well,
it's
my wheels are
streaming too.
my wheels are spinning again. I was just in DC watching another documentary with a bunch of Congress on both sides of the carpet, right? Grit and Grace, and I can't wait to share this with them. And see what I could do with all the different connects that I have to make sure this gets out there. So this is so important. So excited to be here.
Thank you.
It
is. Thank you. Yeah, we would like to try to do a screening on the Hill or at least in Washington and get some politicians so they can hear from the people what they need. Yeah, so that'd be great.
Well, and I think, Hazel, what you just shared, I mean, there's so many folks in our community that are organizing, that are coming together on different issues, and having a film like this to be able to use it as a model and use it for training purposes, for organizing is so key. So there's so many ways. So for those of you who got to watch the short version this evening and got to hear this, really, really rich conversation we had this evening, I just really want to thank Rona and Sandra and Hazel for, being so generous and sharing, so much, to be able to, really give us a good mindset, to leave this evening with. But there's more to do, and you can do it. Ruby did it. You can do it too. That's what she would want.
Exactly.
That's what she would say, right? And so we hope that you stay connected to everyone here. It's so easy to do today. That is the positive of technology for sure, also because it brings us together for evenings like this, no matter where you're all sitting from all around the world, and internationally even, that we got to be together this evening for this conversation. So please stay connected to the Teaneck International Film Festival, stay connected to the film, stay connected to Exposure and Opportunities, and stay connected to the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. We are grateful that you took the time to join us this evening, and so grateful for the panel for being here as well. We thank you all for being here, and good night.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great.